gentlemen, please stand. Join me to salute to our flag and country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing for our prayer.
Almighty God, we give you thanks that spring has sprung throughout the city of Guthrie and our nation. We ask that you bless our community with a sense of vitality and renewal, protection and peace. Give all in leadership the wisdom and strength to know your will and to carry it out. Help them to serve the people as lovers of truth and justice. May you guide our thoughts, words, and deeds during tonight's meeting. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Call to order our special city council meeting of April 11th. Second item on the agenda, presentation discussion regarding possible financing opportunities for capital improvement projects. Eddie, are you taking the lead on that?
Yes, Mayor and Council, as a result of our 80% voter approval of CIP number 2, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So for not only this city council, but our oversight committee, a lot of people worked really hard on that, and I don't need to tell you guys that, you know that. So as a result of that, John Wolf with Municipal Finance Services is here to talk about some possible next steps, how we can move forward with getting some projects financed and get some projects rolling, get them going. So you've got a handout there in front of you. We'll also have it up on the screen. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wolf, and we'll start with the presentation, conversation, and Q&A at any time. So stop us at any time.
Good evening. Good evening.
It's been a few months since I was here, maybe up to a year, so glad to be back in front of you. And we have a presentation. Basically what you have in front of you is a summary of potential financing options if you decide as a governing body that you want to move forward and address projects now rather than wait until those dollars come in over time. Obviously, with the extension of the sales tax out to 2046, you accomplish a couple different things. You obviously get the support of the community that says, hey, they want to continue for the next 22 years and fund capital needs, infrastructure needs of the city, while at the same time, you have the option to look at, do you want to advance fund some projects as opposed to waiting? And you look at it a couple different ways. One is the pure necessity or need for the projects now that have nothing to do with timing of how much it's going to cost later. You would just like to get started on those particular projects now. And that's part of the discussion tonight. The other part is our part, which is looking at whatever particular dollar projects that you want to address now or in the very near future. If you were to accelerate and do those now, how does that compare against what that project or projects will cost years down the road? Until COVID, there probably wasn't as much thought into a particular project or projects increasing annually from inflation, depending on what the project it is, whether it's raw materials, labor, so forth, that it wasn't always a given that you would have significant inflation. So the projects you want to do now won't cost 20, 30, 40, 50% more. And so that's part of our discussion tonight is where has inflation been, what projects you address will have different inflationary type of factors. So you purely look at when you're borrowing is the rate that you borrow at is, do you believe inflation is going to be higher than that interest rate? If you think that's going to happen, and it has happened dramatically, unfortunately, in the last 2 to 3 years, that inflation was as much as interest rates had come up over the last 2 years. Inflation rates on projects, materials, so forth, have gone up fivefold. There are projects that were associated with statewide, different municipalities all over the state, that those projects went up 50 to 75% in 4 years, from right before COVID to now. I don't know if your projects fall into that category. What I have in front of you tonight is if you would like to advance fund projects, we have looked at where your sales tax collections are, because obviously we have to look at any kind of trends. What's happened here lately with your sales tax collections? You also have use tax collections. Sometimes you have sales tax dollars that leave under that category and go to use tax where you have more purchases online. And what we've seen here lately, and what Eddie has provided you, what the staff has provided you, is sales tax pretty flat this year. And your 0.75%, last year brought in about $1,750,000, just around. So you're looking at going out through 2046. Those are the dollars that you have available if you were to continue where you were last year. Year to date, you're about 0.5% less than you were last year, year to date. And so assuming that your sales tax would stay somewhere about around $1,700,000, you have existing debt payments outstanding that eat up part of that existing sales tax that you have levied for years now. And so we looked at, after that debt is subtracted from your $1,750,000, what do you have available for the next 5, 6, 7 years until that debt falls off? And then after that, what do you have as far as dollars coming in from 2031 to 2046, another 15 years? And so in front of you, we basically have a couple debt schedules. It's a lot easier.
Yes, so we'll have that up on the screen. I do want to add a couple of quick notes here. We did collect 1.750, that's correct, last year. We all know in our budgeting, of course, we were very conservative this year, and we're down. Luckily, year to date versus year over year is only 0.5%. But keep in mind, we budgeted a 1% increase in revenues, which ended up putting us about 3% down year to date. Okay? So if you look at the budget versus the actual collections, that's where we're at there. With that $500,000 in debt service. Awesome. Yes, thank you. With that $500,000 in debt service, what we've done here, same exact scenario. We're staying conservative. So we had a high year of 1.750, right? We're not going to do anything that levies us over $1 million a year in debt service. So on the low end, our lowest year of collection yet, which was the first year the CIP sales tax was in effect, was $1.2 million. Our highest year was 1.7. So if the sales tax were to completely bottom out and we had a 1.2 year, we've still got $250,000 in cash that we can put towards current commitments, future commitments, inflationary products, et cetera. If we have a really good year, a 1.7, and we don't have matching inflation, then we've got some additional dollars that we haven't projected. So I want you to know and keep in mind before we start this presentation, a $5 or $6 million note still keeps our debt service under that $1 million a year, which is still conservative in comparison to our collections. Does that make sense?
You said 5 to 6 million?
5 to 6.
Yep, 5 to 6 million. So those are the two proposed debt schedules that you have in front of you. So we do have some cash in the bank for CIP projects at this time. Some of that is to be allocated to Owen Field, and then some of it has been allocated with those other projects. So remember, you've got wastewater treatment plant debt service. We've already included that in our debt service that's due today. Okay, so that's already accounted for. You've got the $4 million, which has been allocated to the industrial park. You've got $600,000, which has been allocated to Sooner Road. You've got $2.6 million, which has been allocated to the street overlay program. So all of those figures are contributing to those allocations. It's not a collection, it's the allocation. So over between now and 2031. So we all on the same page? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So based on everything that your city manager just laid out, when you look at the summary, what I wanted to focus on is what are your needs? Does 5 to 6 million, along with 4 million that you have on hand, address your immediate needs that if you wanted to move forward in the months to come or the next year, year and a half on projects, what the actual market shows today? Interest rates have come up. We were in a 10-year period where rates were extremely low, but those days have been gone for about a year and a half. And so when we're looking at 10 to 12-year terms that we have in front of you tonight, these are based on interest rates that we received indicative rates actually from a local bank. So when I show you a chart, it's not just what we think rates are going to be, and then we don't know until we go out. These are actual rates that would be available, 2 days ago. And so the focus from our end, and we'll be glad to answer any questions, is looking at the maximum annual debt payment on doing 5 versus 6, doing 10 years versus 12 years. The dollars that we were looking at, $1,750,000, if you want to be very conservative, to kind of see where everything's going to go from, there's a lot of concern as to where Oklahoma communities will be going forward as far as sales tax. Eddie addressed that to a certain degree. I feel that if you were to take a conservative stand, and if you see in the little sales tax chart that I passed out, you see in the bottom right-hand corner, you see $1,500,000. It's down below and highlighted at the bottom right-hand corner. If we were to assume those what you have to work with going forward, I think that's plenty conservative. I don't think if you were to go from $1,750,000 to $1,500,000 and then use that number to determine, that's about a 13% drop of where you're at. But if you think that the Oklahoma communities are going to return or go back to pre-COVID as far as the annual collections, then using $1,500,000 as our target, if we were to go as low as that, take off the $550,000 annually that you have on the books for a couple more years, that if you were to subtract that from the $1,500,000, you have about $950,000 available annually going forward that you have until that existing debt falls off. So when you looked at the 4 different scenarios, 5 or 6 million, 10 or 12 years, you can see that on the lower end, if you decided that you wanted to take dollars you have on hand plus an additional 5 million on a 12-year financing, that's about $554,000 a year on a 12-year note. Once again, when you look at doing that now, you have to make the decision is what's critical now, and then what is that particular project or projects going to cost if you wait until you collect the dollars year to year. And so
John, something I want to point out here, on a 12-year note, a $5 million principal amount, a 5.10% interest rate, so 5.10, maximum annual payments $554,000. Total payments over the term is $6.7 million. So the total interest costs there, we're talking $1.7 million. Is that correct? Okay.
That's right.
So keep in mind, we've got one project right now due to inflation and a number of other issues is $1.6 million over budget. So we've got one project.
And how much is that project?
Owen Field.
That's all.
It's 3.6 right now. The 2020 cost estimate was $2 million. So we've not, obviously we haven't opened bids on the full project, but we're still projecting to be 1.6 million over in that project. So,
And that is in a period of time of 2 years as opposed to 12,
right.
in the comparison that you're explaining to us,
That's exactly what we look
you
at.
know? Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
hey, the decision that you think that there's not gonna be inflation and interest rates aren't gonna rise, and you don't care when you get the projects done, then don't do a financing. You don't, or if it's somewhere in between, and that's what you judge, but, we were conservative in what we showed you. We think at 6 million probably might be your cap on what you want to obligate as far as annual debt payments. If you did a 10-year, $6 million transaction, you're talking $750,000 a year for that debt payment. One of the key elements is in that indicative interest rate, that is at any time prepayment with no penalty, no premium. And so if you want to look at, well, wow, rates are kind of a lot higher than they've been, and what if rates drop back down? What are our options? This scenario gives you the most flexibility that if you want to, you get 2 years down the road, interest rates have dropped 2%, you could go in, pay off that note and refinance it to a lower rate.
Kind of
Not a
like
lot.
what we did with the water treatment plant.
Right, but on the, right.
Same exact scenario.
But be honest with you, like on Oklahoma, the OWRB, Oklahoma Water Resources Board loans, those typically have a 8 to 10 year call. You cannot refinance. But on a lot of the notes, as Brian had mentioned, 5 years ago, banks, a lot more banks would do the prepayment, no prepayment penalty. There are very few banks that do that now. But I think that's to your advantage to be able to look at restructuring years down the road if rates were to drop. If they don't drop, it hasn't cost you anything. This bank doesn't charge a premium to get you to every deal that they've ever bid on, and certainly a lot of deals they've won. It's always been no penalty on the prepay early, so. Not a lot more to that. You know, have the amortization schedules that show all the detail, but be glad to answer any questions that you have, but I'll be glad to address those.
Well, I looked at inflation before I came up here this evening, and of course, it's been since 23 or 21, or 21, it's been dropping. And, or June of 23 is when it started dropping, and it's still progressively going down. It's kind of in a slow spot right now. It was coming down, the graph showed it coming down like this, and it just kind of leveled off. It's still going down, just a lot slower. And of course, right now, it's ticking up.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the trend is still towards inflation going down. I'm not a financial whiz or anything, but it looks to me like everything is at least pushing that direction.
We'll see what happens in November.
Yeah, and see what the Fed does, you know, what they do with interest rates.
Well, you know what's happened with the market in 2 days. We did have inflation, it did go up, and there's discussion, I don't know, guys, there's discussion they may not touch rates at all this year.
Yeah.
And they said that
Well, they had talked about dropping rates, and now
Right, I know.
now they're gonna either have to leave them alone or raise them. So,
So the good thing about the financing, I mean, this is essentially what we did with CIP number one. So we did a $3 million note to kickstart CIP number one projects. And the total cost of interest on that $3 million note was almost $600,000. It was $588,000 to be exact. So double the money, double the interest, but the rate is higher. So keep in mind, it's still a good rate. And it allows us to get these projects off the ground, the fire station, the pool, those things that are going to take 2 to 3 years to get done. We need to get rolling on those so that we can see them come to fruition. I don't, excuse me, I don't want to see this be another Owen Field or any other project we've experienced in the last, 24 months, 48 months. We've talked about it on every project. I don't need to tell you that. So this is just a discussion. There's no action item on this tonight. We would look to probably take some action. John, do you have an idea when, how long are these rates going to be good? Let me ask you that.
Well, there's no telling.
This week.
That could change tomorrow.
They're good now.
Good through
They're good now.
Friday.
They're good now.
And I think there was at least 3 comments. I think what's important is what projects you're wanting to do. Because the mayor, you bring up the pool, you bring up other projects. That's the thing when you're looking at inflation is you have to look at everything that's in that's composed in that inflation where it was up 3.1%, but a lot of that was gasoline, that increase. And what was it, gasoline and groceries weren't up as much, but you also have to look at all of the steel, what does concrete cost? Because concrete's that's jumped dramatically. And so you have to look at your project that you're doing, whether you think that's gonna go up. And then you got the flip side is, what are the other things tied with that? Is it emotionally, this is what the community needs and they can't wait 5 years to get it? That's your guys' obviously call. So.
What projects are you looking at, Eddie?
So in ranking priority of the community survey, obviously we want to complete the projects in the order in which they were ranked priority. So water towers first. You heard me say fire station and pool. Those 2 projects are going to take the longest. So because of the design, because of construction, because of property acquisition, utilities, all of that good stuff, we need to start those conversations now. That's at best, a fire station is a 2-year project. If we could go buy a piece of property tomorrow and it had all the site utilities and we were ready to kick off on design. So keep in mind, survey had water towers first. The second project, the first one was the water towers and sanitary sewer upgrades. We've not identified what those sewer upgrades were prior to the tax, and we've not identified that yet. So water towers are first. Second project is the fire station. The third project was the ADA projects that we've like to look at. So in conjunction with the downtown streetscape project, we'd like to move forward with some sidewalk and intersection rehabilitation. We don't have timelines or design on that yet. And then, of course, the pool and Owen Field were your last 2 projects.
I thought,
So-
and maybe I'm wrong, but from remembering how that all came in, and I know there's a emotional deal on the pool, but I thought that was last.
I did too.
And it was, from everything I looked at, it was dead last on.
I thought Owen Field was further up the line than it is too.
So
I did as well.
remember, we had the 6 projects and we combined the water and sewer. The pool was dead last. But when we took those 6 projects, first from the oversight committee to the council, and then from the council to the initiative, we decided that we could do something in each of those categories. So the pool, we're not saying we're building a $9 million pool. We know that's not attainable. We're talking at this point, whatever an aquatic feature will get us, and what we put in the budget for the $15 million we projected this sales tax would generate was a maximum of $2 million.
So you're talking a splash pad type scenario.
Or a scaled down pool. We've got some cost estimates that we feel we can accommodate an aquatic feature.
Diving board out at the lake.
clean up on the
Is it like one of those things where we kind of like utilize the same hole, but we just take it out, put just a basic pool back, but with
That's-
ADA and everything like that?
That's a possibility of some retrofitting. And of course, guys, I mean, just like Owen Field, these are all estimates. We can get to bid opening and we can get surprised one way or the other. They could be way high, they could be way low. And we'll talk more about
But
how.
we can make that decision when that time comes, though.
Yep.
They come in too high, we just say no.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
That's pretty simple.
But so to answer your question, Jim, those are the projects. The ones that we need to start now are the fire station and the pool because of the time of construction, not because of priority. The water towers, that's something we can put a set of bid docs together, bid documents, put them together and get them put out for bid, and have that project done in 60, 90 days.
What
Real-
would be the second one, you think, then? In that similar fashion as the water towers, where you think we can do it? But what would be number two then?
So water towers were first,
Yeah.
fire station was second.
Oh, so those are, okay,
Yes, sir.
those are, okay.
Yep.
In my mind, I'm kind of looking at how to kind of develop a matrix. Because you've got a lot of variables that you've talked about, John. And adding to those variables, the priorities that the citizens have, the type of construction products that go into the product, the length of time that a project takes. I would think adding to that is the potential for grant funding or the potential for a funding through the community service projects. Is that what we're calling them now?
Yes.
Through the political process. And all of that kind of has to be put into it's all a part of the recipe, it seems to me.
Well, let me throw one more thing into the pot, is, although we talked about, I started out talking about rates and so forth, we're also in a very unique scenario, is your short-term investment rates are higher than your mid to long-term borrowing rates. And so, as you look at this, so you guys can be completely informed, is hypothetically, if we were to close a transaction in June, today, if you look at 6 month, you look at 1 month, you look at 18-month treasuries, those are close to 5%. So if you were to close a loan, it's a lot different than it was 3 years ago. Interest rates were lower, yes, but investment rates were barely over zero. And so we would never say, we'd say, all right, try to get everything developed as to what you want to do, and then we'll go to the market. Because what you don't want to do is close a loan, have money sitting in an account, and it's earning diddly squat. That's, you're upside down.
Right.
Today,
It
you're not in
offsets.
that. It goes directly into a trustee bank account, and those accounts, just their money market, they're kind of like their mutual funds, everyday money is earning in the 475 to 480.
But
You-
for how long?
Right, I mean, yeah, it's not
That's
for
the
the full
question.
10 to 12 years, but for the period of time is when do short rates start coming down?
Yeah.
And so, but at least for this period of time that you have between now and the time you're gonna start a project, you could determine, all right, we're gonna invest 75% of those dollars in a 12-month, and a 1-year treasury. Doesn't matter what rates are gonna do, you're gonna lock in at a 5.05%, you're done. But you'd have to really look at what are your draws gonna be against those funds. That's a nuance that helps out significantly to where you were 3 or 4 years ago, when if you got out too early and the project's just kind of muttering along, you've got the money sitting there and it's not earning anything, and you certainly can look at, well, we went out too early. That we're paying whatever percent interest rate, but we're only earning this. Today, it's almost a wash. So that's another consideration as you decide timing on what you didn't want to do with the projects and when you wanted to lock in a financing, so. But I want to give you that.
How feasible is that, locking it into treasury?
I think it's something we could definitely explore. I'll tell you, we're earning a fairly good rate on our checking accounts at this point. I mean, Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're earning over what this rate is here to borrow. So the cash we've got in the bank is generating over 5%, 5.25%.
Cool.
So
But the devil's advocate of that is that can all change.
could
in a
change
week.
tomorrow. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that,
So
Whereas treasuries can't.
that's the issue.
Once
so
you lock
could-
in on them, you're good for whatever the interest is.
And so could this loan rate.
But then you have to borrow against it, so.
but you need to know if you go out and you do a treasury, you need to know how you're gonna draw the money.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
do your best estimate as to when you're gonna draw, and then you're like, all right, are we,
You could get really upside down pretty quick.
you have to think it out, yeah.
That's his job. That's your job,
Yeah,
to think it out for
yeah.
us.
But this is a positive, not a negative.
No, it's a definite positive
Yeah.
compared to
Just
where
make
we were.
Yeah.
So the reason for having this conversation obviously is the time in which it's going to take to get the projects going. And to utilize those funds, we have to finance against it because it doesn't collect until 2031. So think back to when we had this conversation 6-8 months ago when John was here the first time. We said, okay, we can do a property tax and we can do a geo bond and get all the money up front and put a property tax levy on the residents. And we didn't want to do that. And I completely agree. That was the right decision because communities overwhelmingly supported our sales tax. So I think we presented them a slate of projects that we knew we could do something in each of them and get the ball rolling. And we don't want to have the pool closed any longer than it has to be. And we're coming up on year number 2. So this is something to consider. What other thoughts or questions do you have as it relates to a financing mechanism?
In my mind, one of the not concerns, but how do we maintain a flexibility? We've got an awful lot of unknowns here. And just about everything we talked about is, there isn't a whole lot of certainty to it. Another unknown is, we don't know that something major or significant could happen tomorrow that would change those 6 priorities that we just established. And how are we able to react to that unknown?
I think we have to treat those priorities as if they're set in stone. Because it is a restricted fund, a funding mechanism, I think in order to maintain our public trust, we've got to say, those are the projects.
So what was on the list, because I don't remember, that didn't become a priority? Because I remember the pool last.
We
And
only
here-
put-
Let me finish real quick.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
And here's where I'm going with this. If we take the last priority that we posed out to the entire public and we move it to the top of the list, that's kind of against what they wanted. Okay, regardless of what we think, whether concrete costs are down or up, or we want to get this pool going now, it's been closed too long. Well, it fell to the very bottom of the list. Okay, and so, with that being said, I don't know how we can even think about that as being a priority at this point. It's kind of like when you, if you were going to have a barbecue, and I've said this before, and you got to build a water feature in your backyard, but you got a hole in your roof and your toilet won't flush, you fix your roof and you fix your toilet. You don't get to, the pool doesn't become a priority. And in what we posed to the public, it was not a priority. That's all.
I understand where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with your thought process. So I don't think we're trying to change the priority rankings. I think what we're saying is these 6 projects, we knew we could fund with this initiative. So we didn't give them any other projects. We gave them 6 projects. CIP number 1, they had 25 projects, and there was no way we were ever going to fund those 25 projects. So these 6 projects, the ones that are going to take the longest, we can wait if that's what this council would like to do. I think from a staff perspective, the design time and the cost of materials, we should try to lock in, or we're going to be right back in the same boat of we've got outdated cost estimates.
I think citizens would understand if we say, look, we're doing these 6, all of them, but we're going to do them out of order because we're being more fiscally
It makes more
responsible.
sense.
Yeah,
It's also
because the
just
costs
makes
are
more
gonna change
sense.
around. I think they would all understand.
It's also not out of order. I mean, we're starting with the top priority, and we are addressing that. What would be the total cost of the ADA, which was one of the ones that was further up than the pool, to do that for the entire downtown area?
We, excuse me. So to do the entire downtown area, we had a large cost estimate.
Right.
So I believe we allocated 3.5 million, my notes are pulling up here, 3.5 million to the ADA accessibility projects. So the water towers, the fire station, of course, costs the most, which we estimate to be around $5 million. The ADA, 3.5 million. Owen Field, 2 million, the pool, 2 million, and then the rest of it to water and sewer. So those ADA projects, keep in mind, we're doing both sides of the division, from the alleyway south of Cleveland to the alleyway south of Harrison, for 1.2 million.
And we are addressing those.
Yes, sir.
Right. And that's your point, is that we are addressing the top priorities
As well as.
as well
the pool.
as the pool.
No, and I get your point as well, but aren't we talking about securing 5 million, right? That's what we're talking about securing. Well, the firehouse takes it all. Okay, and what I want to know, and I'm still really not clear on, because again, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, okay? If council wants to do the pool. Okay, but at the end of the day, I don't remember that many votes going from the public on the pool. Okay, opposed to everything else is where I'm going with
It's
this.
impossible to tease out
It's-
why they voted yes, Brian,
it-
on.
Well, there was a document put out, and there was a number of people that, I'm talking about when we put out the order of priority of projects, okay, that went in everybody's bill, that went to everybody's emails, that went out to the public. Okay, they signed off, the city put a.
The survey, the community survey.
A survey out,
Yep.
they completed you may not have, but the citizens did, a lot of them. Okay, and I want to know.
Water and sewer was high on the list.
It was very high, but pool was last, and I don't have a problem with the pool. What I'm saying is, if you're gonna borrow 5 million, just to start the projects, wouldn't you wanna, I mean, aren't you planning on completion?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, you're gonna start 3 projects with 5 million, where's the completion, how's it get completed?
Great question. So we've got approximately $4 million in CIP funds in the bank today,
Okay,
$2 million of which is earmarked for Owen Field.
right,
So you take the $2 million, you combine it with the $5 million. You've got $2 million that's interest-free, sitting in the bank, that is earning us money.
right,
The $5 million, of course, we're not spending all this money tomorrow.
right.
Even if we had all these projects rolling in May, we're still talking about a 2 to 3 year time frame. And if we're generating $1.5 million to $1.7 million a year in capital project fund, then we're still adding to our reserve. We're still adding to the money in the bank. So
Well, and what you borrow, you're gonna go back in the bank too, so it's gonna be adding interest to it as well.
that's correct. But I understand what you're
Well,
saying.
but my position is that we borrow the 5 million, okay? That's what my personal position is at the interest rates that we're at today. because we can refinance. The discussion I'm trying to have is the prioritized list and making sure that we don't go do something that the majority is gonna go, hey, wait a minute. That's
Well-
not what we filled out on the survey.
And that's a great point as well. And keep in mind, just like with any project, you're going to have a chance to approve the design. You'll have a chance to approve before it goes out for bid with a cost estimate. So
Why not?
you're not giving staff a blank check and saying, go build a pool or a splash pad. We're just saying, these are the reasons behind having the financing discussion. Does that make sense?
I think
No,
it makes
perfect sense,
It
and I'm
makes
aware of
perfect
that.
sense to borrow the money now, I think.
Yeah, there's no question about
You
that.
can't even have the discussion unless you have the funds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Period.
But all I was having discussion on is everything on the table, not just the money.
I got you. I understand. And we can go further, yet. I'd be happy to get some printouts, and we can go over that community survey data again if we need to do that. But I'll tell you that the projects that we sold to the public, the ones that we've put on the website, we put in the mailer, those are the projects we're proposing. It's all just a matter of timing.
It's all gonna go to the same, to where we said it's gonna go, so it really doesn't matter the order. I see what Brian's saying, I agree with what Brian's saying, because I don't wanna make people upset with us and
That's all I'm
and
saying.
saying that we're not doing what they ask us to do. As long as we're doing them all, though, we are doing what they ask us to do.
Yeah,
So I think it becomes a moot point when it's just we're doing them all.
I think the challenge is to understand the financial responsibility that we have for every dollar of citizens' money that we spend. And if the timeline on the pool, for instance, Brian, is much longer than the others, the fiscal responsibility might be to use, to start investing in that project, even though it wasn't number one, because that's the better return on the investment, since there's such a long lead time into it. That's what I'm understanding.
Well, one other factor, based on what everyone's discussing, I don't see this as an issue, but you're borrowing this money tax exempt. Okay, so the lender's going to not have to pay taxes on the interest that you pay them. In order for that to be tax exempt, you have to, the day you close the transaction, reasonably expect that you're gonna get 85% of everything that's put into the bank account when you close, that you'll get that out in 3 years, 85%. And so, I didn't see anything here mentioned
No,
where
that
that's gonna
shouldn't be a
go
problem.
4 or 5 years, but I wanna make sure this is Uncle Sam doesn't want you going out borrowing money earlier than you need to. So, the point of that is you'll have to kind of reasonably line up your projects and proceed expeditiously as much as you can to get the dollars out the door. So.
And a good point on the other side of this too. I mean, we could reduce the amount of the loan and do it project specific. We didn't bring that to you. I didn't bring that to you because of the transaction costs. So if we were going to do $1.5 million or $2.5 million worth of ADA projects, we could say, here's a $2.5 million loan for ADA projects, but every time we do that, we're going to pay closing costs, just like buying a house or, buying a car.
But we have a financial committee in place that's gonna come to us with a recommendation on how to spend this money anyway. So, that's what we've already done.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where, that's the hands that I throw it in regardless. I'm just bringing out a devil's advocate on some of this stuff where the public may not look at it so happily.
I think if all
But that
the-
we do need to borrow the money.
I think if all of the projects were of the same duration, of the same length, generally, and the same, inflation and all that stuff, then of course we would go just 1 through 6 all through, but this is not the case.
And we intend to, so growingguthrie.com is still live, and we intend to keep that website up. So you can go back and watch the town halls, you can see the information we presented to the public, you can read the frequently asked questions, you can see the community survey data. All of that is still live. It's still on the website. And we intend to keep it there and update the projects. So there's no requirement to do that, but
We should.
this is a big deal. This is a big public trust situation, so we take that seriously.
So, what do you need from us? I mean, is this something that could be done on our next council? Because like you said, these interest rates may be a point higher next week, or could be, or not, or they could be
Well, our
lower.
concern is, yeah, we thought they were gonna, they started coming down at the end of last year, and we were all, everyone was excited, mortgage, car loans, everybody, and now it's starting to tick up. Our concern is, trying to, you know, take all the unknowns. You brought up a lot of unknowns. We've got a lot to work to decide which projects. Let's take one of those unknowns, lock it in and go. And it just doesn't hit you as hard. But Brian's right. You're not gonna have this earnings potential during the whole time because you're gonna start spending the money down and you don't have that interest earnings anymore after you spend half your money down. But if it takes a year and a half before you get really into the projects, you're gonna have significant interest earnings also that are gonna be.
So
What
We
does
can
the
do next
agenda say
meeting.
as far as these items? Does it say it's
It's a
just discussion
discussion
only?
Presentation and
Yeah, no, this
discussion.
is all.
No decision?
No, there's no, it's
That's all.
it's
So
a
we can't
non,
go forward with it even on the long term?
Well, we can recommend it go on next agenda, which is Tuesday.
And that was, so the purpose for meeting tonight to discuss this, one, we have a regular meeting on Tuesday, and two, we tried to get as many council members here as we could. We've got some that will be absent next week. So we wanted to try and have everybody present for this conversation. I think what we do need to provide some guidance on, are we comfortable with a $6 million note? Are we comfortable with a $5 million note? Would you rather see less? Does having debt service up to $1 million, are we comfortable with that? Those are the questions I think we need to talk through. And
5 million. I mean, from what you're telling me, you got $7 million to work with, right? $5 million in loan and $2 million that we've got still?
yes,
That is getting interest every day.
that's correct. Yes, sir.
Right, okay, so sounds to me like, from what you're telling me, the $5 million is gonna be plenty.
But just remember, that 2 million's earmarked for Owen Field
No, it's
already.
No, the other
There's
2 million.
4
There's
million.
4
There's
million
$4
right now.
million.
2 of it is for
Right.
this, so that gives us 7 million with the 5 if we borrow.
2 of it was for Owen Field.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So
And-
that's already marked for Owen Field.
It's already marked for Owen Field,
2 of it's not.
and we won't be spending it until we have a project. So you'll have an award notice on Tuesday on your regular meeting to start the earthwork out at Owen Field. So we've done the groundbreaking, we got bids back, so you'll see that next week. So we are moving forward with that project. I still think at best that's a year, maybe 2. So again, we've got some earning potential on the principal, and both on the money in the bank and on the time between now and then in sales tax collections. But the $5 million, to be honest with you, from a staff perspective, I'm comfortable with either one because they both keep us under the $1 million in debt service. 5 million, I think, makes us just as happy as 6. So I think the only question to ponder is, if you're going to do 5 million, do you go ahead and do 6 to avoid future cost of issuance if you need it? You've got the extra $1 million. There's a difference there. It's about $100,000 a year in debt service. So that's the question. From a staff perspective, we're comfortable either way.
And the devil's advocate on that is, come November, December of this year, interest rates could drop through the floor.
True.
And now all of a sudden, we're out and we are gonna refinance, and we're gonna end up paying those fees again regardless.
Oh, yeah, that's.
So,
and then I
it's
say
gonna
you
happen.
can refinance it,
Okay, it
fine.
will happen.
6 months from now, you're gonna say, well, here comes John again.
And it's gonna happen, you know that. So, I think less is more, at this point, just my opinion.
What about 10 versus 12 years on the term?
I don't even know that matters, does it really?
$100,000.
I mean, it's gonna be refinanced, John.
You think it's gonna be
It-
refinanced.
Interest rates could do the opposite. I mean, we're
The only thing, the 5% where we're at is, everybody's stuck in what's happened the 10 years prior to COVID.
Right.
Prior to that 10 years, this is average rates.
Yeah,
And you guys remember when the,
Yep.
of course, you remember when they were 9 and 10%, and
Yeah.
some remember a lot higher.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
you're right.
12 years gives you, lowers the payment, obviously, you pay more interest, it gives you a little more flexibility, but I don't care either way.
So the 12-year note lowers the annual payment by about $80,000, the total interest difference. So it's $80,000 a year lower for a 12-year note than a 10-year note. Over the term, though, you pay about $330,000 more in
If you
interest.
hold on to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
If there's not a refinancing. and-
if there's not a
and of course,
refinancing,
That's the big,
So 10 years is probably the number.
I would tend to move towards the 10.
What are our closing costs on a $5 million note? I've never done that, so I don't know.
They're right here. Most of it's fees, financial fees, that we need to have a discussion on as well at some point.
$125,000.
Well,
No, that's a 10-year.
for the bank.
right there. So your cost of issuance is on the screen. Bond counsel fees, expenses, financial advisor fee and expenses, your local counsel fee, and then purchasers council and the trustee bank. So total of $124,500. So
Regardless of the number of years.
that's a 10-year.
12's the same.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 12 the same? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. The only fee that I see here that is negotiable is local council. So the local council fee, the 12.5. So,
Yeah.
and we're happy to have those conversations at a separate time.
Purchasers council, depending on the bank, they gave me the rates, they will rely on bond counsel's opinion, they won't hire their own attorney to review bond counsel's work, so that would fall off.
The purchase council.
So you,
$5,000.
it's $5,000.
Yeah, that would fall off if the bank that gave us the bid, it's a bank in town, you probably can figure out.
Yeah.
I just don't want to throw names out at this point in time. They buy a lot of notes statewide, not just in this area, so I think they're very aggressive, so anyway.
I say we go with the 12-year on $5 million.
So one of the good things about either term is it doesn't tie future council and staff hands when they get to 12 years from now. So the position we're in today is, the reason we went out for the extension is because our hands were tied with the current projects. Not a slight to any previous council or staff. They did what they could. They did the best they could with the resources they had. And so we're doing the same thing. The good thing about either term is that hopefully I'm here that time, and we don't have to worry about it. And so if that's not the case, that new tax starts in 2031, and there will only be 2 years of debt service left on this. So that you'll have considerable purchasing power in 2034 versus what we have today, is what I'm saying.
Well, if interest rates stayed the same like they did 10 years prior, and they stayed at 5%, then it does make more sense to stick with the 10-year versus the 12.
Yeah.
If we weren't gonna refinance it. The only reason I would go 12 is if we just 100% knew we were gonna refinance. We don't really know that, but odds are probably good, but
I don't think we're gonna get anywhere close to where we.
not where we were at the,
I mean, I remember coming here showing you guys 2% interest rate.
yeah, no, I know.
Why would
We were loving it.
We did.
See that?
We were loving it.
Yeah,
We thought that was gonna last forever, John. At that time.
So is the council comfortable with staff moving forward? We're not asking for a vote, a yes or no, but if we were to bring you an item back to move forward with the best financing deal, whether that's a 10 or 12 year, are we comfortable with that on a $5 million note?
I am.
I'm not hearing much from this end of the table.
I'm comfortable with that. I
I
like
am
the
too.
10 better than 12 at this moment, but yes, I'm comfortable with that amount.
Yeah.
With the understanding, you'll still have a chance to vote on it.
Sure.
We're not trying to
Right.
pull a fast one. Just make sure if we do the work and get everything drawn up and bring it back, want to make sure it's what you want to see. So,
John, on the refinancing, the cost of issuance here, are you saying that that's going to be about the same as if we refinance?
Well, those fees you saw for bond counsel, it's 1% of the par amount. If you were to do a refinance, and I say refinance, you can refinance it. It's not like you refinance with your bank, that there has to be a brand-new issuance under tax law. So, anything I threw out, and you say, well, we get 2 years down the road, and we pay down, $400,000. You can look at the debt payment schedule, you're at 4.6. I'll tell you guys right now, it's gonna be 1% times, for us too, so it's 2%. You're paying another $110,000 2 years from now if you want to, because you have to do a brand-new financing under tax law. And so it's not we'll just refinance, it doesn't cost you a thing. It does cost you.
Yeah.
No, it gets down to the 2% rate is where it makes sense.
And that's what we show you, and that's what
Right.
we did on some of the other transactions. We'll show you, here's the net of you doing the refinancing, so.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Other questions? I think you have
So realistically,
some.
the
Go ahead.
refinance is unlikely to happen because of the cost involved, unless, like Brian said, we would expect interest rates to drop at that,
If they drop from 5,
which is likely not to happen.
if they drop from 5 to 4.5, I'm saying,
No.
you guys can do that. 5 to 4, no, 5 to 2.5.
Yeah.
Then we're talking.
Now you're starting, yeah.
And
You have to overcome at least the cost of redoing.
It's just a wash, basically, right?
yeah, and we'll tell you what the rate is at the time you're considering it. What is the wash rate you need to get to for it makes sense to get down? But it doesn't matter. We're showing you how much you're saving in interest, and if a lot of that's going to pay to do the refinancing, you guys have to know the net number.
Sure.
Whether to move
Right.
forward or not.
Right. Okay,
all right. Any other questions for Mr. Wolf? Okay.
all right. We're moving on then to item number 2. Discussion regarding current and future potential economic development strategies.
Yes, Mayor and Council, wanted to get this on your radar while we're talking about sales tax. One of the strategic goals the council has had since I've been here. Thanks, John. One of the strategic goals the council has had since I've been here and even prior to has been how to capitalize both on the downtown core and economic development strategies, and also economic development for I-35 corridor. So that's something, as we continue to move forward with these projects, the staff that we have in-house, economic development-wise, obviously Shonda and myself and Justin, we share those responsibilities. Our capabilities are limited based on the capacity that we have. So something coming up, first meeting in May, where we would like to explore and look a little further into what we can do for retail recruitment. I understand that the city council has been down this road before, so bear with me as we start having these conversations. What economic development looks like and what national chain recruitment or development on I-35 looks like is a conversation that's larger than any city's in-house staff. And if you look at the municipalities who have done it well, they have a contract for economic development services. And so that's something we're going to look to discuss with you at the first meeting in May. Didn't want to surprise you with that at all. Wanted to get your thoughts on that now. See if you had any clear direction or comments you wanted to make. I think we've heard loud and clear that the downtown needs to be an area of focus. I think we all agree on that. We've also heard I-35 corridor. There's no reason our I-35 corridor shouldn't be just busting at the seams. So, any other thoughts, comments, concerns? We would
Usually-
love to have them.
Like with I-35, my understanding is a big way that we could attract them is by going ahead and laying in utilities and having it kind of set ready, as we call it. Construction ready, right, and build ready.
Right.
Yep, site ready.
Yep.
Yep, so keep in mind, there's a lot of area down there now. Of course, it's privately owned, as is all property, that has utilities on it. So everything west of 35 and where you see the Brahms, the Sonic, Pizza Hut, that area's got full infrastructure ready to roll. It's shovel ready. So there are some areas as you go south of Noble that we would need to, south of 33, that we would need to expand utilities into. But before we do that, just like with the industrial park site, we need to know why we're doing that. I think calculated risk is okay. You've got to take some risk to get a reward, but I'm also not comfortable saying, let's go build, 36-inch sewer with a force main and a lift station and all this other stuff, for a big box retailer or fill in the blank. To me, that's not a good use of our tax dollars. So the short answer to your question, Adam, is that a lot of the sites have infrastructure to them. It's just a matter of recruitment and doing it. Retail development, much like everything we do in city government, is about relationships. And so having those relationships gets you what you need and gets you in the door. So,
But if I'm hearing Adam, I think I don't know if you're saying that you feel that we should invest in bringing that up, because that's what I believe. Because at the end of the day, our only form of tax revenue is retail. Okay, and the only way we're gonna increase these numbers here is to not get away from the Walmart of the world, because we have to have those, obviously, but to increase that by other businesses, whether it'll be at a Lowe's or, big, some type of chain, bigger chain that comes in on one of the highway exits. That's what's gonna have to happen.
Yeah.
So we've invited Retail Strategies, which is an economic development firm. They typically work for the private industry. They don't typically work for municipalities. They do have experience working for municipalities, but a majority of their clients are private companies, privately held companies. One of the most recent transactions that Retail Strategies took care of in our community is the Casey's General Store. So the transaction from the Star Stop to the Casey's down there on Division in front of Walmart, Retail Strategies coordinated every piece of that transaction. And so this is not, I want to be clear, I'm saying Retail Strategies, not any other firm that may have previously worked here. So.
Well, as, just following up on what Brian is saying, economic development has been a part of our discussion
Yeah,
for,
forever.
Forever.
Whole time I've been
Because
here.
we recognize that that is our lifeline. If we're standing still, we're losing. If we're standing still, we're losing ground. We've approved 800 new rooftops, so we've got more potential buyers of product, if you will, out there coming. The land is not going to be available forever. We need to be moving on, and if your sense is that that your staff is pretty well maxed out, and we need to have an outside group assist us, I think that's a good investment. I just think we need to be moving that way, personally.
I'd like to know what their fee is.
Yeah, no question. Oh, that'd be $7 million.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think.
Refinance.
Thank you.
Well, the good thing is I've never brought you something without being fully transparent about what it's going to cost. Depending on what the council wants to see, Retail Strategies has a variety of offerings. I have previous experience with them in Rogers County, and they were highly successful in recruiting retail development to Rogers County. So when they come in, that first meeting in May, I think we have a conversation. We talk about what we would like to see, what we would expect. From what I've heard from the council, from what I hear from the staff, that's a combination of downtown revitalization. Let's get the juices going again. And then the I-35 corridor, it needs to be retail focused. Now, we still have the industrial park, and we'd like to discuss that too at a later date. However, for this conversation in particular, I want you to think about this just like with John Wolf coming in. Kim's our clerk treasurer, but that's not necessarily her expertise. She's not doing financing or any type of investment on that scale on a daily basis. It's no different than engineering, planning, CPA firms. We pay Crawford and Associates to review and finalize the financial statements that Kim prepares. So we have knowledge, and we're working diligently. I mean, the shops have been a great retail success, and Shonda likes to remind me that that's 7 small businesses. So 3 of which have graduated into downtown stores. And so we've got organic growth, and we've got the growth that we are able to accommodate in-house. But if we want to take that next step, if we want to really push forward, I think we need to look at that contract. And again, I don't have a proposed fee at this time, excuse me. But just want to make sure, one, from you, are we heading in the right direction? Are you hearing, are we all on the same page? 2, are you open to the conversation? So.
Yeah.
Again, personally, I think it's the only direction we should be heading. We can't be standing still. One person's opinion.
Well, economic development's too important, and if you don't have time to do it, then we have to hire somebody. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
I just like to know, again, like what they're gonna charge, like to see what other advice they've given other municipalities. And we have Austin Goodwin, one of my neighbors, him and his dad have one of the largest chain retail builders in the United States. They're in Atlanta and Denver, and I think the only ones in Oklahoma they do are in Tulsa, OKC. They live by the temple. You might get some free upfront advice from them. They're putting in the sandwich shop across from, or right next to Boomerang.
Yeah.
That couple.
Yeah.
I don't mean they like just build a building. I mean they do the massive chains. Might be good to ask their opinion on some stuff.
I'm not against that. Keep in mind, we'll welcome any expertise to the community. I think one thing we do really well is small business. I mean, that's what brings people to the community. But when we walk down the streets after 5 o'clock or on Sunday, what's open and how do we capitalize on the people who come to town after hours or on Sunday? And that's going to have to look like a lift that is larger. It's still a small business, but we're talking 25 to 50 to 100 employees, something that can accommodate the crowds. So, and this is a firm that I have not only personal experience with, professional experience in a previous county that I worked in, as well as municipality. So
Well, you're gonna have them come in May, right?
Yep.
And so we'll have the opportunity to address all of that right at that
Get
point.
specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would be happy to visit with the good.
Oh, that's just what they do. They're the ones that, I asked him that, I was like, what can we do? And he was the one saying, well, you need to be shovel ready, site ready, and run utilities out as a big, and he just kept going on down the list, and I was like, well, thank you. I was like, so, Yeah.
And I can tell you, staff, we've done everything that we can on that side. It really comes down to, if you want serious recruitment, you've got to have a foot in the door with those companies. And unfortunately, without those connections, you don't always see that. Use the John Wolf example for a moment. He's dealing with a local bank that we have experience with. That's not always the case. That is a fantastic benefit to us. And I think we're getting a better rate because it's a local bank and they know us. That doesn't happen everywhere. Other communities may not get the same treatment. So it's about that relationship.
Tracy, any
No,
thoughts?
I'm just soaking it up.
Sponge.
I'll sleep on it, and as Eddie knows, I have 1,000 questions later.
I'm here all
That's
day.
good.
I'm
That's
here all
good.
day.
That's good.
So,
Okay, anybody else? No? Good? You have your input?
I've taken it all in. Thank you.
That's the last item on the agenda.
Boom.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it.